Hey everybody, and welcome to a new video on E.Stampley art. Today we're going to be looking at Tombow dual brush pens and really fun ways that you can use them for your artwork, blending, and all that wonderful stuff. And maybe a couple of different methods that I've been using that I've enjoyed that may be helpful for you out there. So if you get one of the dual brush pen sets like this one is the Bright palette. But every set comes with a colorless blender that you can use with any of the pens. It's very, very helpful, especially for a lot of techniques that we're going to be looking at in this video. You can also get the Tombow Blending Kit. I got this particular one in an art box that I subscribed to, but it comes with a colorless blender. It also comes with a Spritzer spray, color wheel showing you all the colors that you can get the Tombow markers in, blending palette, which is on the other side, and also a blending guide showing you different techniques that you can use. So with all these, let's look at some techniques that we can do with these Tombow markers. So the first technique we're going to look at is indirect blending. So this is where you take whatever color that you're using and you're going to apply that to the blending palette. And then you take your colorless blender and drag that through the color on the palette. Then take your colorless blender and put it on your paper. And obviously, as you're using the blender kind of as a marker on your paper, it's going to go from dark to light as the color runs out of the blender. It's really great. You can use different colors and blend them together, create different hues and all that kind of stuff. But this is indirect blending, using the blending palette, the markers, and obviously the colorless blender. The second technique that we're looking at is direct to paper blending. So this is where you take the marker directly to the paper and put your color down. You can overlay the colors, which tends to work pretty well, and then you go behind them and with the colorless blender and use them to blend the colors together. It usually works really well, especially if you're using like 3 colors, dark, medium, and light hues. Also 2 colors, if you've got a dark and a light hue, will also work pretty well. So this is direct to paper blending, where you basically are just using the marker on the paper and the colorless blender. The third technique we're going to look at is the two-tone method. So with the two-tone method, you're using your blending palette. You put the darkest color on the palette first, then you go back with your lightest marker color, go through the dark color that is on the palette, then go to your paper and put the color down. And as you can see, it's similar to the indirect blending, to where you go to dark to light, with the exception of this, instead of using the colorless blender, you're using one of the other markers. So you go from the dark color that's blending in with the lighter marker into the color of the lighter marker. It creates interesting techniques and textures, and it works really well and does really nice things on the paper. So with this particular method, you're only using the blending palette and just the markers themselves, and that is the two-tone method. Since Tombow markers are water-based markers, you can use them kind of like watercolor markers. So basically you can do a couple of different things. You can put the color on the blending palette, then take a brush with water, obviously, and go through your color that is on the palette and then brush that on the paper. You can also take the marker and put it directly to the paper and then brush over it with water to blend it out as well. It's a really beautiful technique. It has a watercolor feel, obviously. Since these are water-based markers, you're going to get that sort of feeling. And it's a really beautiful technique that blends really nicely and is probably the smoothest out of all of them for blending your colors together. So obviously with blending with water, you're going to need water, some brushes, and your markers. And you can use the blending palette, or you don't have to use the blending palette. If you use the marker directly onto the paper with the water and the brush, then you don't need the palette. But you can also do different things with putting the color on the palette first and diluting it, and then taking the brush to the paper. And that is the blending with water technique. So I figured since we got this little spritzer bottle in the blending kit, maybe we should look at how to use it. So we put water in the little spritzer bottle and set it aside. Then we take our blending palette and put color on our blending palette, colors we may like to blend together. And then we take our spritzer bottle and spray it lightly over the palette. Then we take our sheet of paper and put it on the palette and kind of press it down, and then it will lift the color off of the palette onto the paper. And so you get this very interesting, maybe kind of splashed technique, very mottled color usually, unless, of course you're just using one color, but it blends the colors in a very watercolor technique style. It's very interesting. So that's a fun way you can use the little spritzer bottle that you get in the blending kit, if you get the blending kit. I want to thank you guys again for tuning in to a new video here on my channel, and I hope these different techniques of using these Tombow markers were very helpful for you. If you guys have any other suggestions about how to use some water-based markers like Tombow markers, please feel free to comment down below. I would greatly appreciate it. I'm sure others would greatly appreciate any suggestions or tips or techniques that you may have as well. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a nice thumbs up down below. And also, if you want to know about new videos upcoming on my channel, please feel free to hit that red subscribe button down there, and then you'll know about those when they come out. And you can also follow my journey on Twitter and Instagram at E.Stampley Art. And as always, I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Bye!